I should have never unboxed it. That's the first thing you need to understand before anything else. I thought I was just buying an old iPhone off eBay, nothing fancy, just something cheap to get me by until I could afford an upgrade. But the moment I slid that box open, the moment I touched its cold, scratched screen, I signed away everything I thought was mine. You probably think I'm exaggerating, that I'm just another internet crank posting spooky nonsense for attention. I thought the same thing once. I thought the stories I'd read on late-night forums about cursed auctions and haunted electronics were just jokes. But when the phone started whispering to me in the dead hours of the night, when I found photos of myself on it that I never took, I realized those stories were warnings. And I didn't listen. Every rule you think you know about technology doesn't apply here. You can't turn it off. You can't break it. You can't give it away without passing the curse along. The iPhone doesn't just store data, it stores pieces of you. Memories, secrets, thoughts you never spoke aloud. It knows things it has no right to know. I've tried smashing it, drowning it, burying it miles from my house. It always comes back. Sometimes on my desk, sometimes in my bed, sometimes buzzing in my pocket when I swear I left it behind. No matter what I do, I can't escape it. And I'm not telling you this for sympathy. I'm telling you because the auction is still live. Someone else is going to buy it eventually, and when they do, my part in this ends. That's how it works. That's the only way out. So ask yourself, would you keep it if it knew your secrets? I wasn't looking for trouble. I was just looking for a phone. Mine had finally died after years of abuse, dropped in puddles, left in hot cars, tossed across the room during arguments I'd rather not remember. By the end, the screen was a spiderweb of cracks, and the battery could barely last an hour. So I did what anyone broke and impatient does. I opened eBay. I wasn't expecting much. A cheap replacement, something to make calls and doom scroll on until my next paycheck. Most listings were the usual overpriced nonsense, like new, mint condition, or slight wear that still cost as much as rent. But then, buried several pages deep, I found it. The title was painfully generic. iPhone, used. Works. No model number, no specs, not even the courtesy of saying what color it was. The photos were worse. 3 blurry shots that looked like they'd been taken on a potato camera. You could barely tell it was an iPhone at all. Just a scratched rectangle sitting on what looked like a dirty carpet. The price, though, made me stop. $40. With free shipping. That should have been the first red flag. Nobody sells working iPhones that cheap. But there it was, $40, no returns accepted, and a seller with a name I couldn't pronounce and exactly 0 feedback. I should have clicked away. Instead, I laughed. Sketchy, sure, but what's the worst that could happen? It arrives broken. I'm out $40. So I bought it. The box showed up 3 days later, plain cardboard with no return address. Inside was bubble wrap, a faint smell of mildew, and the phone. It was heavier than I expected, scuffed along the edges, the screen peppered with hairline scratches. But when I held the power button, the screen lit up. The Apple logo appeared, faint but steady, like a heartbeat. I remember actually smiling, like I'd beaten the system. $40 for a working iPhone. Who cares if it looked like it had been chewed on by a dog? I plugged it in, watched the battery icon crawl upward, and told myself I'd just gotten lucky. There were little things I noticed, things I brushed off at the time. The back of the phone was faintly warm, even when it wasn't charging. The previous owner hadn't wiped it properly. There were old contacts, strange notes written in the Reminders app, half a playlist with songs I didn't recognize. One of them was just titled For You. I didn't think twice. I factory reset it, set up my own account, and tossed it on my desk like it was nothing. It was just a phone, until it wasn't. The first couple of days, it felt like any other phone. Slow sometimes, sure, and the battery didn't last as long as it should have. But what did I expect for $40? I brushed it off. People romanticize brand new gadgets, but most of us are just trying to keep something alive long enough to get through the day. But then the phone started acting wrong. At first, it was little things. Notifications popping up at odd hours, but when I swiped down, nothing was there. Not a text, not a missed call, nothing. Just the faint buzz, the little glow of the screen, and then emptiness. I told myself it was some leftover junk from the old software. Ghost notifications, right? That's a thing. Except the timing was strange. They'd always come when I was alone, lying in bed with the lights out, or sitting at my desk at 2 in the morning. Always when the silence was thick enough that the sound felt louder than it should. I didn't even notice at first. I'd wiped the phone, but the gallery app still had a handful of images tucked into some hidden folder. They weren't anything dramatic, blurry shots of rooms I didn't recognize, a street at night, what looked like the inside of a bathroom. Every single one was low quality, slightly tilted, like they'd been snapped in a rush. But a few had people in them. Or maybe parts of people. A shoulder in one, half a face in another, blurred so badly you couldn't make out details. They looked almost too blurry, like someone had smudged them deliberately. I showed one to a friend while we were hanging out. "Dude, that's creepy," he said, zooming in. "Looks like a jump scare from one of those found footage movies. Probably just leftover junk from the last owner." I laughed, forcing it. They probably never cleaned their camera lens. But later, scrolling back through the folder, I realized something I hadn't before. One of the blurry faces looked eerily like mine. Still, I ignored it. We all ignore things we don't understand if the alternative means admitting something's wrong. The battery became the next problem. It would drain impossibly fast, dropping from 80% to 20% in minutes. I'd charge it overnight. But in the morning, it was always at some uneven number, like 47%, as though something had been using it while I slept. Sometimes I'd wake up to find the flashlight on, screen glowing faintly against the sheets. One night, I plugged it in before bed and heard it vibrate softly. I turned over, half asleep, expecting a text. The screen showed a missed call. The number? All zeros. When I tapped to view the call log, it disappeared, leaving nothing but a blank history. I started joking about it to my friends, making light of it. "Guess my bargain phone's haunted," I'd say, laughing, even though the sound felt tight in my throat. They laughed too, but every time one of them held the phone, it seemed colder than it should be. One guy actually handed it back right away, muttering, "Man, I don't like the way this feels." I kept telling myself it was just glitches, just software bugs, just quirks of old hardware. But deep down, I knew better, because that was when the phone started talking back. It started with whispers. Not loud, not clear, just a faint, almost static-like murmur that would creep out of the speaker when I wasn't using the phone. Sometimes it happened while it was sitting on my desk, screen black, plugged into the charger. Other times it happened when I was holding it, thumb hovering over the screen. It was never long, just a second or two, like the tail end of a conversation I wasn't supposed to hear. At first, I thought it was interference. Old electronics bleed noise all the time, right? But the longer I listened, the less it sounded like static and the more it sounded like words. I remember one night in particular. I'd set the phone on my nightstand, rolled over to sleep, and just as I started drifting, I heard it. Still here. My eyes snapped open. The room was empty. The house was silent. But the phone speaker was buzzing faintly, just loud enough to make my skin crawl. I sat up, picked it up, and whispered, "Hello." The screen stayed black. The buzzing stopped. I told myself it was my imagination. Sleep paralysis, auditory hallucination, whatever excuse I could grab at. But then Siri got involved. It was maybe a week later. I was cooking, phone face down on the counter, when Siri's voice broke through the silence. Not the cheerful, robotic tone I knew, but flat, deliberate. "I've been waiting." The pan slipped from my hand and clattered against the stove. I fumbled for the phone, heart hammering, and flipped it over. The screen was awake, but there was no app open, no activation screen, nothing. Just the plain home screen, as if I'd pressed the button myself. I swallowed hard. "Who is this?" I muttered, not expecting an answer. But the phone did answer. "You know?" That voice didn't sound like Siri anymore. It was distorted, low, like something mimicking speech through layers of static. I dropped the phone onto the counter and backed away, staring at it as though it might sprout teeth. The screen dimmed after a few seconds, glowing faintly in the dark kitchen. For the rest of the night, I couldn't stop checking over my shoulder. The worst part wasn't just what it said, it was what it seemed to know. The next day, while scrolling through notes, I found one I hadn't written. It just said, "Don't forget the red hoodie." That wouldn't have been strange, except I was wearing my red hoodie at that exact moment. Another note appeared later. "Check the back door." I did. It was unlocked, even though I knew I'd locked it earlier. I tried to laugh it off to a friend over text. "My phone's haunted. Want to trade?" He replied almost instantly, "Dude, stop. Don't joke about that." When I asked why, he just left me on read. The whispers got worse. Louder. Sometimes when I held the phone up to my ear, I could swear I heard breathing, slow, deliberate, waiting for me to speak first. One night, I finally broke. I was sitting at my desk, phone buzzing with another phantom notification, and I snapped. I held it up and shouted, "What do you want from me?" The screen lit up without me touching it. A message appeared across the Notes app, each letter forming one by one. To be seen. My throat went dry. "By who?" I whispered. The phone vibrated. Another line appeared. "By you." That was when I realized it wasn't just a glitch or a prank or some leftover data from the last owner. The phone wasn't broken. It was alive in some way I couldn't explain, and I couldn't ignore it anymore. I spent that night pacing the room, trying to convince myself there had to be a rational answer. A hacked phone, a weird virus, something, anything. But when the whispers rose again, clearer now, like laughter echoing from inside the shell of the device, I knew there was only one thing left to try. I had to reset it. Resetting the phone should have been simple. I'd done it dozens of times with other devices. Wipe it clean, start fresh, erase whatever junk was causing problems. But with this phone, nothing went the way it should have. The first time, I followed every step. Settings, general reset, erase all content, and settings. The screen went black, the Apple logo appeared, and I felt this stupid little rush of relief. Like I'd outsmarted it. Except when the phone restarted, nothing had changed. My photos were still there. The creepy notes were still there. Even the phantom playlist with "For You" at the top was still waiting. The only difference was that my wallpaper had changed. It wasn't the default Apple background anymore. It was a photo of me. A candid one. I don't remember anyone taking it. I tried again. And again. Every time, the reset seemed to work until I turned the phone back on. Then something new would be waiting for me. Once, all my contacts were replaced by numbers I didn't recognize. Each one saved under the same name. Don't answer. Another time, the voicemail inbox filled with recordings I couldn't explain, static, scraping noises, faint voices that always seemed to be saying my name under the distortion. What was deleted always came back, but different. That phrase stuck in my head like a warning. The deeper I dug, the worse it got. Hidden apps appeared, ones I couldn't uninstall. Their icons were blank, just empty black squares. When I tapped one, the phone would freeze, and the faint sound of whispering would leak from the speaker until I shut it off. One app was just called Gallery. Not photos, not camera roll, Gallery. Inside were images of rooms I knew too well, my bedroom, my kitchen, my bathroom. All taken at night, when the lights were out. Another was labeled Messages. But instead of texts, it displayed conversations I'd had years ago, arguments, secrets, things I thought I'd long forgotten. Things I'd never typed on this device. That was when I started to panic. This wasn't just a haunted phone. It was like the thing had access to me, to my life, to my past. I scoured the internet, digging through obscure forums, buried threads, anywhere someone might have mentioned this kind of problem. Most people brushed off similar stories as urban legends or creepypastas, but a handful of posts made my stomach knot. Users describing phones that wouldn't reset, data that reappeared even after a wipe, devices that seemed to remember their owners. The threads always ended abruptly. No closure, no explanation. Just someone saying, I'll try one more thing, or I think I figured it out, then silence. That silence was worse than any scream. By the fifth reset attempt, my hands were shaking. The phone powered back on, screen glowing softly in the dark. A new contact had appeared, pinned to the top of my list. No number, no email, just a name. Me. I stared at it for what felt like forever, my thumb hovering over the call button. But before I could do anything, the phone vibrated in my hand. The screen shifted on its own, and then it called me. When the screen lit up, my stomach dropped. The caller ID said exactly one word, me. No number, no details, just that. At first, I thought it was some twisted glitch, some leftover from the factory resets I'd been hammering at for days. But then the phone started to ring. It wasn't the default ringtone, either. It was low, droning, mechanical, like a heartbeat played through broken speakers. I should have let it ring. I should have thrown the thing across the room and left it buzzing on the floor. But curiosity is a sickness, and mine has always been terminal. Hello. For a second, all I heard was static. Then the static shaped itself into something worse. My own voice. Not a recording, not an echo. It was me. Distorted, deeper, like it was playing back through layers of water and broken glass. I told you not to look, the voice said. I froze, throat dry. Who is this? You know who I am. The words rattled through me. It wasn't just the sound, it was the way they landed in my chest, like they'd been waiting there already. I don't understand, I whispered. The voice laughed, but it was hollow, a warped imitation of my own laugh. You will. Then it said something that chilled me more than anything else could. Lock your windows tonight. I shot a glance toward the glass pane above my desk. It was already locked, but the certainty in that voice made me cross the room anyway, fingers fumbling with the latch until I heard the click. Why? I demanded. What happens if I don't? The voice paused, static swelling, like it was choosing its words carefully. They'll come back. Who will? I pushed, heart thudding. But it didn't answer. Instead, it shifted tone, still me, but broken in half, like two versions of my voice overlapping. Don't wear the red hoodie tomorrow. That stopped me cold. I was wearing that hoodie the night I found the note in the Reminders app. My mouth went dry. What happens if I do? Don't. The word came sharp, final. The call cut off. Just like that. No goodbye, no signal loss, just silence, leaving me staring at my own reflection in the darkened screen. I dropped the phone onto my desk like it had burned me. My hands were trembling, but not just from fear. There was something else gnawing at me, something worse than the whispers, worse than the distorted voice. It knew things I hadn't told anyone, things that hadn't even happened yet. The rest of the night, I didn't sleep. I sat awake, every sound outside my apartment setting me on edge. The creak of pipes, the hum of the fridge, the occasional car rolling down the street. All of it felt like a countdown to something I couldn't see. Every so often, I picked up the phone just to check if it would ring again. It didn't. But in the morning, I noticed something that made my blood run cold. A sticky note on my fridge door. My handwriting. For words, don't forget the hoodie. I don't remember writing it. I should have been terrified, but instead, something else settled in. A pull. The same gnawing curiosity that had made me answer in the first place. Because if the phone knew something, if it could warn me about what was coming, then maybe it wasn't just a curse. Maybe it was a key. I needed answers. After the call, I couldn't just sit there. I had to know where this thing came from, who had owned it before me, and why it felt like the phone already knew me better than I knew myself. I pulled up the eBay listing again, staring at the seller's username. It wasn't even a real word, just a jumble of letters and numbers, the kind of name you'd generate when every decent one was already taken. No profile picture, no bio, no feedback. Just a blank account that had been active long enough to look real, but hollow enough to feel fake. The listing was gone. Not sold out, gone. No record of it in my purchase history, no archive page when I tried the link. If I didn't still have the shipping confirmation email, I could have convinced myself I'd hallucinated the whole transaction. That was when I turned to forums. If you dig long enough, the internet always has a shadow version of itself. Buried boards, archived threads, forgotten comment sections that never quite die. That's where I found them, the stories. People talking about ghost auctions, shady sellers on eBay or Craigslist, or obscure classifieds. Every single post had the same undertone. The buyer gets something ordinary. A phone, a camera, a laptop. At first, it works fine. Then the strangeness begins. One user described buying a laptop that wouldn't stay off. They'd shut it down, and it would boot itself up in the middle of the night, showing webcam footage of them asleep in bed. Another said their haunted camera kept producing photos they hadn't taken, some of strangers, others of the user themselves, captured in moments they didn't remember. And then, of course, there were the phones. I found at least 4 different threads about secondhand smartphones that behaved exactly like mine. Phantom calls, ghost contacts, apps that couldn't be deleted. One post even mentioned receiving a call from myself. That word, myself, was underlined like the author had been desperate to emphasize it. The strangest part wasn't the stories. It was how the threads ended. Always abruptly. Someone would say, "I think I figured out how to stop it," or "If I disappear, you'll know why." And then, nothing. No follow-up. No conclusion. Just silence. I scrolled through page after page, my skin crawling with recognition. Every warning I read felt like it was aimed at me directly, like I was reading a script I'd already started performing. At the bottom of one archive thread, there was a single reply from a deleted account. Just one sentence. "If you're reading this, it's already too late." I sat back from the screen, the room suddenly too quiet, the phone buzzing faintly beside me like it was mocking me. I should have stopped digging. I should have taken the warnings for what they were. Red flags, flashing neon signs telling me to get out while I still could. But I didn't. I thought I could outsmart it. I was wrong. At first, everything strange had been contained inside the phone. Glitches, whispers, calls I couldn't explain, that was bad enough. But after digging into those forums, it stopped being just digital. Whatever lived inside that device started to bleed into the rest of my life. The first time it happened, I was lying on the couch, scrolling mindlessly. The phone buzzed in my hand. The moment I touched the screen, the lamp beside me flickered. Just once. A hiccup of light. I told myself it was wiring. Old bulbs. Coincidence. But then it happened again, the next night, only worse. The overhead light strobed so violently when the phone rang that I thought it was going to shatter. After that, the phone didn't just make the lights flicker. My TV powered on by itself, blasting static in the middle of the night. My microwave's clock reset every time the phone buzzed. Even my laptop, the one I was too scared to research on anymore, froze whenever I set the phone near it, like the thing was sucking the life out of every machine in the apartment. And the photos. God, the photos. It started when I opened the camera roll and found a picture I hadn't taken. It was me, sitting on my couch, scrolling my phone. The angle was wrong, though. It was taken from across the room, where no one had been. The next day, another photo appeared. Me, asleep in bed, mouth slightly open, blankets twisted. Again, the angle was impossible. Then the strangers started showing up. Sometimes they were standing in the background of the shots, just out of focus. A man in a long coat by the kitchen doorway. A woman with hair covering her face, blurred behind my bedroom curtains. Their features were always smudged, like bad JPEG compression, but the shapes were undeniably human. And every new photo brought them closer. I showed one to a friend, half laughing, half desperate. "Look at this. Tell me it doesn't look like someone standing there." He squinted, frowned, then handed the phone back without a word. "What?" I pressed. He wouldn't meet my eyes. "Nothing, man. Just get rid of that thing." But I couldn't. I'd already tried. The texts were the worst. They came late at night, always from numbers that didn't exist. One of them was from my grandmother, dead 5 years. "Why didn't you answer the door?" it said. Another came from a childhood friend I hadn't spoken to in a decade. "I saw you today. You didn't wave back." The last one broke me. It was from my dad. He's been gone since I was 13. The text was simple. "I'm proud of you." I dropped the phone when I read it, tears burning in my eyes. For one terrible second, I wanted to believe it was real, that he'd somehow found a way to reach me. But when I picked the phone up again, the message was gone, erased from the thread, as if it had never existed. It wasn't just my devices breaking down. My body was, too. I started getting nosebleeds out of nowhere, thick, metallic streams that wouldn't stop for minutes at a time. My head pounded constantly. I couldn't sleep more than an hour without waking up drenched in sweat, heart racing. Some mornings, I swore the phone was heavier in my hand, like it was feeding on me, dragging pieces of me into it. People noticed. At work, a coworker muttered, "You look like hell, man." My mother asked if I'd lost weight when I visited. I laughed it off, told them I was just stressed, just tired. But deep down, I knew what was happening. The phone wasn't just following me anymore, it was consuming me. And yet, I couldn't let it go. Every time I thought about smashing it, burning it, burying it, I'd remember the voice on the call, the warnings, the rules I didn't understand but desperately wanted to. Some part of me believed that if I figured them out, I could beat it. I was wrong, because one night, after weeks of torment, the phone lit up on its own. No call, no buzz, just a single notification glowing in the dark. A message. Final warning. And then I got the final message. The message appeared just after midnight. No buzz, no chime, no alert to draw my eyes. The phone simply lit up where it sat on the nightstand, as though it wanted me to notice. On the screen, a black background, white text, pulsing faintly as though alive. When it hits 0, you'll understand. Below the words, a countdown had already begun. 0:59, 0:58, 0:57. At first, I thought it was a prank app. Some leftover virus I hadn't managed to scrub away. But the numbers were moving, smooth, perfect seconds, draining away with clinical precision. I should have thrown the phone out the window. I should have powered it down, smashed it, anything. Instead, I sat there frozen, heart pounding, watching the seconds melt away. 50, 45, 40. By 30 seconds, my hands were shaking. Every breath felt too loud in the silence of the room. I kept telling myself, it's a trick. It can't do anything. But my body didn't believe me. My body knew something was coming. At 20 seconds, the lights flickered. Once, twice, then stayed dim, humming low like the electricity itself was holding its breath. At 10, my phone vibrated so hard it rattled across the table. The screen brightened until it was the only light in the room, washing everything in ghostly white. 9, 8, 7. I found myself whispering, "Please, please don't." 4, 3, 2, 1. The timer vanished. For one long, impossible second, the screen went black. Then the camera feed began. It wasn't the rear camera or the front. It was something else. The perspective was wrong, like it was shot from the corner of the ceiling, tilted slightly downward. And on the screen was me, sitting on the edge of my bed, phone clutched in both hands, eyes wide and terrified. The live version of myself stared at the recorded version, and the recorded version stared right back. I twisted, scanning the corners of my room. Nothing. No cameras. No shadows. Just me, alone, exactly where the phone showed me to be. Then the feed zoomed closer. My on-screen self leaned forward, mouth opening. I couldn't hear the words, but I could see them forming. And they weren't random. They were deliberate. My own mouth was moving to say something I hadn't spoken. That was when I snapped. I screamed and hurled the phone to the ground. Below the words, a countdown had already begun. 0:59, 0:58, 0:57. At first, I thought it was a prank app. Some leftover virus I hadn't managed to scrub away. But the numbers were moving, smooth, perfect seconds, draining away with clinical precision. I should have thrown the phone out the window. I should have powered it down, smashed it, anything. Instead, I sat there frozen, heart pounding, watching the seconds melt away. 50, 45, 40. By 30 seconds, my hands were shaking. Every breath felt too loud in the silence of the room. I kept telling myself, it's a trick. It can't do anything. But my body didn't believe me. My body knew something was coming. At 20 seconds, the lights flickered. Once, twice, then stayed dim, humming low like the electricity itself was holding its breath. At 10, my phone vibrated so hard it rattled across the table. The screen brightened until it was the only light in the room, washing everything in ghostly white. 9, 8, 7. I found myself whispering, please, please don't. 4, 3, 2, 1. The timer vanished. For one long, impossible second, the screen went black. Then the camera feed began. It wasn't the rear camera or the front. It was something else. The perspective was wrong, like it was shot from the corner of the ceiling, tilted slightly downward. And on the screen was me, sitting on the edge of my bed, phone clutched in both hands, eyes wide and terrified. The live version of myself stared at the recorded version, and the recorded version stared right back. I twisted, scanning the corners of my room. Nothing. No cameras. No shadows. Just me, alone, exactly where the phone showed me to be. Then the feed zoomed closer. My on-screen self leaned forward, mouth opening. I couldn't hear the words, but I could see them forming. And they weren't random. They were deliberate. My own mouth was moving to say something I hadn't spoken. That was when I snapped. I screamed and hurled the phone to the ground. The screen spiderwebbed instantly, a jagged starburst cracking through the live image of my face. I stomped on it, heel coming down again and again until the glass caved in, until the plastic frame bent under my weight, until it was nothing but shards and sparks. When I stopped, I was gasping, sweat dripping down my temples, blood trickling from my nose again. The room was quiet, dark, normal. I told myself it was over, that it had to be, that I had destroyed it before the countdown's promise could come true. But I was wrong, because smashing the phone wasn't the end. It was only the beginning. I thought smashing it would end things. I really believed that if I crushed it into enough pieces, stomped the life out of it, the nightmare would finally stop. But when I woke up the next morning, the phone was on my nightstand. Perfect. Untouched. Like nothing had ever happened. No cracks in the glass, no dents in the frame. Just that black screen reflecting my face back at me, waiting. I tried everything after that. I took it outside, dropped it in a storm drain. That night, it buzzed beside my bed again. I buried it in the woods, digging until my hands blistered and bled. 2 days later, it was in my kitchen drawer. Once, I left it on a train seat and watched someone else pick it up. I thought maybe it had found a new victim, maybe I was free. But by the time I made it home, it was sitting neatly on my pillow like it had never left. It doesn't want to be destroyed. It doesn't want to leave me. I used to think those were tricks of the brain. False alarms. But what if they aren't? And here's the part where I need you to pay attention. Because maybe, just maybe, it's not only me. When you watch this, listen carefully. Check your pocket. Check the table beside you. Did you just feel it? That faint vibration, even though no notification popped up? That half second where you swore you heard your phone ring. But when you looked, the screen was blank? What if it's this? What if it's already reaching for you? I tried living with it. I tried ignoring it. But you can't ignore something that doesn't sleep, that doesn't stop, that watches you even when you turn it face down. Eventually, I realized there was only one way out. If it came to me through an auction, maybe it could leave the same way. I cleaned it up, well, as much as you can clean up something that doesn't stay broken. Wiped the screen, polished the frame. Took a few nice photos. I didn't even need to fake anything. The camera made it look perfect, desirable, like a brand new device. Like bait. The hardest part was writing the listing. I stared at the description box for hours. Should I warn them? Drop hints? Tell the truth in riddles, the way those old forum posts did? In the end, I wrote what had been written for me. Vague, cheap, no details. Just enough to make someone curious. Just enough to make them click buy now. Because here's the truth. I don't think you can ever destroy it. I don't think you can even keep it. The phone doesn't belong to anyone. It belongs to itself. It just moves. From one person to the next. From me to you. Maybe you don't believe me. Maybe you're laughing right now, telling yourself this is just a story, that none of it's real. But think about this. How many times have you bought something online without a second thought? A too-good-to-be-true deal, a vague listing, a product that arrived without warning? Check your email. Check your order history. Check the package sitting on your desk you haven't opened yet. Because someone will buy it. Someone always does. And if you're hearing that faint buzz right now, the one you swore was in your imagination, you might already know the truth. Would you keep it if it knew your secrets?